Hello everyone, it's the Red Bull talking about the Valley of Dry Bones, and its true location may be found in Arizona or New Mexico. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Before I started this journey in search of the true Valley of Dry Bones, I believed at one time that Death Valley in California may have been the historical site, but after beginning this journey, I have come to the realization that Death Valley in California doesn't line up with the proposed paths of travel that the Israelites may have taken on their way out of Misraim into the Promised Land. Ezekiel 37 offers a glimpse into the land of dry bones, as we read in Scripture. And the hand of Yahuwah was upon me, and took me out in the spirit of Yahuwah, and set me down in the midst of a field which was full of bones, and caused me to pass by them round about. And behold, there was very much upon the face of the field, and they were very dry. And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, Yahuwah, thou knowest. Then he said unto me, Prophesy upon the bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of Yahuwah. And I believe you know the rest. But if you don't, you can rewind it and pause the text and read it for yourself. But one thing you might not know is there's another scripture that talks about this area. The book of Jasher actually explains that these piles of dry bones belonged to the tribe of the men of Ephraim, which we will go over a little later in this presentation. But for now, I would like to show you the actual trail that I think Ephraim took out of Misraim. This ancient route rebranded as El Camino Rio de Terrena Adentro, which translates into road inside the earth. This is the trail that the Native American guides would later take the Spanish in search of gold. But were they really searching for gold? Or were they searching for holy relics and passage into the Promised Land? This is how I picture the Promised Land and its relation to Misraim or Egypt. Before the people of Misraim were rebranded as Aztecs, they were known as the Mexica. The X is pronounced she. This is not an Egyptian term. It is actually a Hebrew term, and they pronounce it Meshika-ni, which means the people of the Messiah, which we see Meshika means Messiah or Mashiach, which is the most correct way to say the Messiah in Hebrew, and it is used in many of the Hebrew manuscripts. Also know by the scriptures that Joseph spent 80 years ruling over the people of Misraim. We are also told in scripture that Pharaoh gave Joseph an Egyptian name, Zaphanath-Paneah. Come to find out, the funny thing about it is Zaphanath-Paneah is not an Egyptian word, and there's no Egyptian definition for it. Now, I know I might be butchering the name, but this is a Hebrew term, and it means he who explains hidden things or the revealer of secrets. But I digress, so back to Joseph reigning over Misraim for over 80 years. We are told in the scriptures that during Joseph's reign of Misraim, that Egypt flourished and it was blessed much. Is it possible that during this time of Joseph's reign that he had the whole lands of Misraim worshiping the one true God, Yahuwah? Heard many people draw connections between Joseph and Pharaoh Akhenaten, Amenhotep III, who shifted the Egyptians from worshiping a pantheon of gods and causing them to worship a single god, which we are told is a sun god. We're also told that he was able to build a whole new city, a whole new temple, and a new capital, Amarna, in just 13 years. Now, in no way do I believe that this is Joseph, but I do believe that this might be the Pharaoh or one of the pharaohs that ruled at the time that Joseph was around. And I believe that he ruled for a lot longer than they tell us. Now let's take a look at the lands that I consider Goshen, that are mostly in modern Yucatan. It is etymologically linked to the Hebrew word Jakatan, which means he will be made small or the smaller. Yucatan is tied to the Mayans, which later on you will realize the significance. Now you have all heard of Balaam and how Balak summons Balaam to curse Israel, but Yahuwah forced Balaam to bless Israel instead of curse them. Now these are scriptures that talk about Balaam, all the scriptures in the Old and New Testament. Balaam is a very mysterious and interesting character. We see Balaam is the son of Beor, and the name of the city of his house of his kingdom was Dinahaba or Nineveh, according to the Targums. The Targums also place Balaam alongside with Job in the lands of Misraim during the Exodus and the plagues. Behold, at this time tomorrow I will cause to come down from the treasures of the heaven a mighty hail, the like of which has never been in Misraim since the day when men were settled upon it until now. But now send and gather together thy flocks and all that thou hast in the fields, for upon all men and cattle that are found in the field and not gathered together within the house will the hail come down, and they will die. Job, who reverenced the word of Yahuwah amongst the servants of Pharaoh, gathered together his servants and his flocks within his house. But Balaam, who did not set his heart upon the word of Yahuwah, left his servants and his flocks in the field. The book of Jasher also speaks on Balaam, the son of Beor, and depicts him as a wise and definitely gifted individual who intentionally serves King Augeas of Chedam. The book also places him in Misraim and draws a broader picture of his life and activities. We all know that the enemy has changed people, places, and time periods. Let's keep this in mind as we go through this text. Speaking about the enemy, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall break down the saints of the Most High, and think to move the times and the law, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times, and half of a dividing of a time. Now check this out. The books of Chelam, Balaam are a collection of Maya texts written in the Yucatec Maya language using the Latin alphabet. Remember, the book of Jasher places Balaam in Chedam, which sounds an awful lot like Chelam. In Yucatec, Chelam means mouthpiece and Balaam means jaguar, and he was also known for his prophecies. Could this just be a coincidence? I don't think so. By the way, Mayan is also a Hebrew word that translates to spring, fountain, or wellspring. It is also associated with the life-giving power of water and is used metaphorically to represent the source of renewal and inspiration. And Mayan just happens to be a very popular name amongst the Hebrew people. And yes, the Yucatan Peninsula is known for its numerous freshwater springs, primarily in the form of cenotes, which across these Mayan lands, there just so happens to be 10,000 of these cenotes. Mayab was the original name of the Yucatan Peninsula in the Mayan language, Mayab. In the Mayan language, it means few, not many. With terms, it would be the place where there are few people or chosen people. Bible describes Goshen as a well-watered and fertile land, and the book of Jasher describes it as the best land of Egypt, or as I prefer to call it, the lands of Misraim. I find it interesting that most of the temples and pyramids that were prescribed to the Aztecs were somehow destroyed by the Spanish during their conquest. Solid rock structures, pyramids, and temples were destroyed by them and supposedly repurposed. See in several apocryphal texts that God's actions during the Exodus included the destruction of physical structures associated with Egyptian worship and adultery alongside of humbling their Egyptian or Misraim gods, while according to the Bible, Goshen remained untouched as it is today. Me, alongside my wife, actually traveled to the Yucatan, and we were able to see some of these pyramids. And what was interesting is that some of these altars that were built there were built using uncut stones, which, if you know and you read the Bible, the altars in the Bibles pertaining to the Hebrews were also made with uncut stones, which, if I'm right about the true location of Misraim, This area right here in the Yucatan would be a prime location for Goshen. So many Hebrew connections, so many pyramids, more found in these lands than anywhere else in the world. Egyptian hieroglyphs and mythology. The ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs for mountain Dijus depicts two peaks with the valley reflecting the actual mountain ranges they observed in their everyday lives. The symbol was deeply intertwined with their cosmic belief, representing the universal mountain supporting the sky. As we can see here, there is plenty of mountains and valleys in the lands of Mexico that match up with the lushness that is written about in the books of antiquity, referring to Egypt. Yes, ancient Egyptian texts do mention and depict mountains and mountain ranges, although we are told their perspective differs from our modern understanding. We can see the land that they tell us is Egypt is mostly characterized as deserts and has a few rolling hills here and there, but nothing I see in their immediate surroundings that represents mountains. But back to the King's Trail that leads us to the Valley of Dry Bones and the story of Ephraim and their exodus out of Misraim. Book of Jasher, chapter 75, at the time in the 180th year of the Israelites going down into Egypt, there went forth from Egypt valiant men, 30,000 on foot, from the children of Israel, who were all of the tribe of Joseph, of the children of Ephraim, the son of Joseph. For they said the period was completed which Yahuwah had appointed to the children of Israel in the time of old, which he had spoken to Abraham. And these men girded themselves, and they put each man his sword on his side, and every man his armor upon him, and they trusted in their strength. And they went out together from Egypt with a mighty hand, but they brought no provisions for the road, only silver and gold. Not even bread for that day did they bring in their hands, for they thought of getting their provisions for pay from the Philistines, and if not, they would take it by force. And these men were very mighty and valiant men. One man could pursue 1,000, and two could rout 10,000. So they trusted in their strength that they went together as they were. And they directed their course towards the land of Gath. And they went down and found the shepherds of Gath feeding the cattle of the children of Gath. And they said to the shepherds, "Give us some of those sheep for pay, that we may eat. We are hungry, for we haven't eaten bread this day." The shepherd said, "Are they our sheep and cattle that we should give them to you even for pay?" So the children of Ephraim approached to take them by force. And the shepherds of Gath shouted over them that their cry was heard at a distance. So all the children of Gath went out to them. When the children of Gath saw the evil doings of the children of Ephraim, they returned and assembled the men of Gath, and they put on each man his armor, and they came forth to the children of Ephraim for battle. And they engaged with them in the valley of Gath, and the battle was severe, and they smote from each other a great many on that day. And on the second day the children of Gath sent to all the cities of the Philistines that they should come to their help, saying, "Come up unto us and help us, that we might smite the children of Ephraim, who have come forth from Egypt to take our cattle and to fight against us without cause." Now the souls of the children of Ephraim were exhausted with hunger and thirst, for they had eaten no bread for 3 days. And 40,000 men went forth from the cities of the Philistines to assist of the men of Gath. And these men were engaged in battle with the children of Ephraim, and Yahuwah delivered the children of Ephraim into the hands of the Philistines, and they smote all the children of Ephraim, all who had gone forth from Egypt. None were remaining but 10 men who had run away from the engagement. For this evil from Yahuwah was against the children of Ephraim, for they had transgressed the word of Yahuwah in going forth from Egypt before the period had arrived which Yahuwah in the days of old had appointed to Israel. Of the Philistines also there fell a great many, about 20,000 men, and their brethren carried them and buried them in their cities. And the slain of the children of Ephraim remained forsaken in the valley of Gath for many days and years, and were not brought to burial, and the valley was filled with men's bones. Men who had escaped from the battle came to Egypt and told all the children of Israel all that had befallen them. Their father Ephraim mourned over them for many days, and his brethren came to counsel him. And he came unto his wife, and she bore him a son, and he called his name Beriah. for she was unfortunate in his house. Now we know whose bones were in the valley of dry bones that Ezekiel prophesied over. And we know Ephraim did not cross the Red Sea. He went straight up from the lands of Misraim to try and claim the promised lands through the lands of Canaan. And if Misraim is in the lands of Mexico, then they would have used well-known trails, like the trails that Abraham and others would have used during the famines to get into Misraim for corn. The Spanish who accessed these indigenous trails that were used for thousands of years before the Europeans showed up, renaming them to the Royal Road or the King's Highway, El Camino Real. Though this is one of the most common trading paths used by the natives of the land to travel from the South, Central, and North America, Google has 0 Native American names for this path. I believe that the Rio Grande Valley is the Valley of Dry Bones, which naturally would have separated the lands of Canaan and the lands of Misraim. You might be asking yourselves, why didn't the Israelites just go up into the Promised Land instead of having to cross the Red Sea? But as you can see, they were corralled up against the shorelines of the Red Sea. This text from the Targum of Jonathan might shed some more light on the situation. And it was when the Pharaoh had released the people that Yahuwah did not conduct them through the way of the land of the Philistines, though that was the near one. For Yahuwah said, lest the people be affrighted in seeing their brethren who were killed in the war, 200,000 men of strength from the tribe of Ephraim, who took shields and lances and weapons of war, and went down to Gath to carry off the flocks of the Philistines. And because they transgressed against the statutes of the word of Yahuwah, and went forth from Misraim 3 years before the appointed end of their servitude, they were delivered into the hands of the Philistines, who slew them. They are the dry bones which the word of Yahuwah restored to life in the ministry of Ezekiel the prophet in the vale of Durnam. If they now saw them, they would be afraid and return into Misraim. But Yahuwah led the people round by the way of the desert of the sea of Suth, and every one of the sons of Israel with 5 children went up from the lands of Misraim. And now we could see another reason why Yahuwah took Israel across the Red Sea instead of straight up into the Promised Land. I'll be dedicating a whole video to the Exodus to show you the path I believe the Israelites took from Misraim to the Promised Land. But for now, I'll just give you a tidbit on why I believe that this location, as depicted on hundreds of old maps, is the true location of the Red Sea, and the dotted line represents the path that I believe the Israelites took to cross the Red Sea. Exodus 21, Targum of Jonathan, and he stretched forth, and the children of Israel went through the midst of the sea upon the ground, and the water was congealed like a wall 300 miles on their right hand and on their left. Interesting, isn't it? This area just happens to plot out almost 300 miles exactly. But back to the Valley of Dry Bones, Gath was one of the 5 cities of the Philistines, Petapolis, located in northern Philistia, close to the borders of Judah or Utah. Remember, there's no J's in Hebrew. The Amarna letters, written in Akkadian cuneiform, are a collection of diplomatic correspondence between the Egyptian administration and the representatives of the vassal rulers of Canaan and Amaru during the New Kingdom period, roughly 1360 to 1332 BC. Amaru, Kana, America. In Hebrew, Gath means winepress, and it also refers to one of the 5 principal Philistine cities mentioned in the Bible. The name's connection to winepress suggests that the area is likely known for its wine production in ancient times. Yes, there is wild grapes in New Mexico, specifically canyon grapes. Vista arizonica is native to the southwest United States and is known to thrive in the southwest New Mexico. It's a vigorous vine that can be found near the Gila cliff dwellings and other locations. We are told that the highest grape production in New Mexico historically occurred in the late 19th century. By 1880, New Mexico had over 3,000 acres of vineyards producing 908,000 gallons of wine, making it the 5th largest wine producer in the U.S. at the time. The city of Gath was said to be fortified, and some sections of the walls were approximately 13 feet wide. This image in the background is of Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, which I think is a prime suspect for the city of Gath, which is very close to Rio Grande Valley, which I believe is the Valley of Dry Bones. Chaco Canyon, particularly Pueblo Bonita, is a likely location to find ancient walls that are 13-inch thick and tall in New Mexico. Chaco Canyon Valley is also known as the Anasazi Ruins. The valley is characterized by a shallow canyon that deepens in Chaco Canyon, where the major archaeological sites are located. Published by Ancient Origins, discusses possible connections between the Anasazi, the ancestors of the Pueblo people, and the biblical Anakim, a race of giants. The article also notes similarities between the megalith structures in the Canaan region associated with the Anakim and those that are found in Chaco Canyon. Congratulations if you made it to the end. This was one of my longest videos, a lot of information to try and pack into this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you join us on our next journey. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and remember, may Yahuwah bless you.